Welcome into Bet the Edge on the NBC Sports EDGE YouTube channel. I am your host, Sara Perlman. Of course, that is my good friend, as always, Drew Dinsick. Coming up on the episode today, baseball is back after the All-Star break, and we're going to break down tight division races with You Better You Bet's Nick Kostos and our very own Drew Silva. Can the Braves catch the Mets, and is there value to back a team to win the AL Central? We're going to answer those questions. Plus, as we always do, Drew and I will wrap up the show with our Edge of the Day. Those are our best bets on the board for today. We have that plus a lot more coming up here on Bet the Edge, powered by PointsBet. Drew, happy Monday. How was your weekend, both betting-wise, not betting-wise? You tell me.
Ooh, it was a great weekend. Just an ideal summer weekend. Got to reconnect with a bunch of friends we haven't seen in a while as well. So outstanding all around. Got to put a exclamation point on the World Athletics Championships, where the USA brings home 13 gold medals, 33 in total. It was just a masterclass of a performance by Team USA. So that was great. Winning runs all around the Eugene track up there in Oregon. It was quite a cool weekend for them. So very cool. And a lot of no doubters, unlike whatever in the world was going on in the NASCAR situation yesterday. Did you catch any of that?
Ridiculous. So it's funny. I didn't see it until early this morning. Crazy controversy going on. Read about it. So for those of you that didn't follow it, Danny Hamlin, Kyle Busch disqualified. There's post-race inspections, and essentially they had an illegal thing. I don't even know what to call it in their car. You could probably describe it better, but Chase Elliott finished third. Now he's essentially the winner. They're going to now send the cars, I believe, to North Carolina, inspect them and see. But it is kind of crazy because this is the first time NASCAR has stripped the title of a driver via post-race inspection dating back to 1960. So pretty wild what happened in the NASCAR world this weekend.
Yeah, I've never seen that before. Obviously, it hasn't happened since 1960. And, honestly, it's been a little bit of a quiet season for NASCAR. For them to be making news like this is kind of not great for them. But
not the best look. But it is, I guess, if you were a backer of Danny Hamlin, the good news was PointsBet, who obviously we were close with, they paid out the bets for Danny Hamlin if you had them. So via the sportsbook rules, people cash their tickets, but obviously Kyle Busch, Danny Hamlin, not happy about that. We'll see what comes, but that was wild out of the NASCAR world. I will say I got a soccer winner. I just want to say,
yes,
MLS
Philadelphia Union.
That is my not my new sport. I played soccer, but this is my new betting, I think, wheelhouse. VAR, thank you very much. I don't know if you caught a lot of that game, but I like the MLS, obviously, fun winner. So we'll move on. I just wanted to brag for a second that I got a nice winner. I feel like I haven't had a plus money in a while.
Plus 175 money line.
I just it felt good. Like I had good vibes into the weekend. Yeah. Okay, just a reminder, if you don't have the NBC Sports Predictor app powered by PointsBet, go download it now. The contests are free, easy to play, and you have a shot to win thousands by predicting what will happen in Major League Baseball, on the PGA Tour, and NASCAR circuit. We also have a special contest on Tuesday and Thursday called Battle of the Bets, where you can agree or disagree with our experts for a shot to win some cash. Big Battle of the Bets right now. What's going on? A lot of baseball talk. And we're going to get into Battle of the Bets, of course, later today. But for now, let's bring in Drew Silva and Nick Kostos to help us break down what's going on in the world of baseball. Let's begin in the NL East. Obviously, getting a lot of headlines with the New York Mets, specifically Atlanta Braves now with injuries happening to Duvall. So we'll see kind of how this division plays out. But Nick, I'll start with you because you do live in New York. I know you're a Yankees fan, but I want to talk about the Mets for a second. Being in New York, following the NL East and baseball as you do with betting, what's kind of the vibe and how are you reading the New York Mets right now?
Well, I can tell you that any weekend where the Red Sox lose by a combined 7,000 runs, great weekend to be a fan of the New York Yankees, who take 2 of 3, of course, from the Baltimore Orioles. But I can tell you that much like my anxiety is growing as we approach October as a Yankees fan, the collective anxiety of Mets fans is swelling as well. And we had last week on You Better You Bet, we had on Odyssey Sports Major League Baseball insider, our good friend John Heyman, who also writes for the New York Post. And he basically I'll believe Jacob deGrom's back when I see it, that deGrom's going to be back in a Mets uniform this year. Now, he's not reporting that deGrom's not going to pitch this year. That wasn't what he was saying, but I think his attitude kind of reflects what a lot of Mets fans are feeling right now. Mets fans are obviously really locked into their team. New York, obviously, obviously a fantastic baseball town. And like, there's a lot of mystery and like it's shrouded in secrecy. Like, when is DeGrom going to be back? When's his next rehab start going to be? Like, what's the shoulder soreness he's dealing with right now? And I think because of that, the Mets right now, I'm looking right now, the points bet odds, and at Bet Rivers, it's pretty similar. The Mets minus 150, Braves plus 105. I think these two teams are like pretty equal. If DeGrom's not going to come back, I think there's a case to be made. The Braves are probably better, and the Braves have certainly played better since May began here. So I think basically like whichever team is plus money is worth taking a shot on here. And the longer we go without Jacob DeGrom coming back, and again, it's not that I think he's definitely not going to come back, but like you start to be like, hey, like what's actually happening here? So if the Mets were plus 105, I would say, hey, let's take a shot on the New York Mets here. I really think it's basically like whatever team is plus money is the team probably to look at here. I don't think there's a lot separating the teams, despite the fact the Mets currently hold a 2.5 game lead atop the NL East.
Yeah, I mean, I think frankly, like the Mets fans probably thought that the collapse was coming sooner and more aggressively than it has. So maybe they're playing.
Oh, I think you're wrong about that. I think Mets fans are conditioned that this is going to be like, like with the Marlins in 2007 and the Phillies and in 2009, what we saw in that time period here. With Tom
okay, let me reframe that. I
season.
thought the Mets collapse was coming more quickly than it has. So maybe they're playing with house money in my mind right now. Drew Silva, do you have a read or any inside sources that tell you DeGrom is actually on the radar this season? And does that ultimately make a plus EV bet on the Braves at plus 105?
I mean, you hope that what he's dealing with is just routine soreness. Like, he made 3 minor league rehab starts and they were all very successful. He looked like Jacob DeGrom. He was hitting triple digits with his fastball, and then he feels a little achiness in that shoulder, which scares you. But he threw a side session the other day. He's supposed to maybe go out on a minor league rehab assignment again sometime this week to restart that thing and push toward a return to Queens. I don't really have a good read on the situation. I don't think the Mets really have a good read on the situation. They've slow played this the entire year. They're hoping this doesn't become a significant setback. I'm kind of dancing around the question because I have no clue. Like, I hope that if he makes it back and they have DeGrom and Scherzer in the rotation for the first time, this could be a better team in the second half than it was in the first half. And they had one of the best first halves they've ever had in franchise history. It was their best record before the All-Star break since 1986 when they won their last World Series. I kind of agree with Nick that you probably just want to take the plus odds on this. The team that has the plus odds feels like the better bet because it's really close. And I mean, so much is dependent on the trade deadline too. And that's another level of
that's what I was going to
uncertainty.
actually follow up with you, Drew. I am curious as you talk about, Jacob DeGrom and what they'll do, whether it's adding relievers or a DH or whatever we're hearing from the New York Mets. And the Braves now probably have to make a trade too because Adam Duvall's season-ending surgery and a few players kind of struggling like some in the league right now on the Braves side.
Pretty good last year at the trade deadline. The Braves
exactly. So there's certain teams, and I think the Mets are one and the Braves are another team that aren't afraid to go out and take on big contracts or whatever have you. So is this kind of a sit and wait and see who both the Braves and Mets add at the trade deadline, or would either of you guys feel inclined to get involved now?
Well, the Mets are not scared to spend money under Steve Cohen. We know that. So they would maybe be more inclined to go after Juan Soto. I mean, they've been mentioned in the running there. I don't know if they have the minor league pieces to get it done when compared to like the Padres and the Cardinals and the Dodgers. But that's the Juan Soto factor is huge here too. I would expect the Mets to do more at the deadline just because they've been so aggressive under this new ownership. The Braves probably need more pieces though. They need another starting pitcher too. Like Ian Anderson has been pretty awful, which, it stinks because he had such a promising start to his career. Spencer Strider might run into some workload issues. Charlie Morton's not getting any younger. I think they need a starting pitcher and they need an outfielder. And I wonder if they're going to be able to get impactful players in both of those spots.
Very fair point.
Shame about Ian Anderson. I absolutely loved him as the front
Me
man
too.
in Jethro Tull. But as concerns like the Juan Soto thing, like I want to talk about him when we talk about the NL Central, the St. Louis Cardinals. I think that's interesting. And just as like the Mets are concerned, I think it's probable. Like I said, I'd rather take a shot on the Braves here at plus money to win the division and finish with more regular season wins. If DeGrom comes back and is good to go in like the final week of the regular season and the Braves still win the NL East, like I think the Mets are still more likely to win the World Series if they have those two guys than the Braves would be. Or maybe like, honestly, I take the Mets to win the NL pennant at I don't care what seed they are in the playoffs if they have those two guys at the front of the rotation. So for the Mets, like it's not about winning the National League East. It's about having those two guys healthy and with a competent manager.
Also, if you're the Braves, you have a clear path to the playoffs via the wild card at this point. You're not, the fabric is a little different, in terms of priorities. Plus, you're the reigning world champions. Like, the idea that you're going to give up all of your future assets to try to win a division this year is a little soft, right? So yeah, there may be Braves perfectly comfortable heading in as a wild card to try to defend their title. The Central is not as clear cut. In my mind, at least, because the Cardinals are on the bubble, very much so, and so they may be feeling a little bit of pressure to put something together here to close that gap between them and the Brewers. Drew Silva, being from St. Louis, you probably have your finger on the pulse here. People in the city nervous at all, or everybody sort of feels like this team is going to ultimately realize their potential?
No, it's contentious around here right now, especially with the news that Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt are not vaccinated, so they can't go to Toronto for this series that starts the week. And Steven Matz went down with a MCL strain in his knee, on his first start back from the IL from an arm injury. So they need 2 starting pitchers too, and I think they're in position to get Juan Soto. They can do it. If they want to, it makes sense short term. It makes sense long term. If they do want to sign him to an extension, that money would come in when Paul Goldschmidt's money comes off the books. Arenado's money comes off a couple of years later. They can totally make him the face of their franchise, and they have the prospect capital to get done. So it's such an interesting aspect to this race. And I really think they might do it. Like, I don't have sources inside the Cardinals, but it seems like these negotiations maybe started a couple weeks ago. Like, we just heard that he turned down the extension last week, but I think he turned down the extension toward the beginning of July, and that this has been kind of on, these negotiations have been happening longer than when we first heard about it. And I feel like the Cardinals can do it if they want to.
Yeah. So I agree with Drew. I think if I had to, like, view or putting a betting market out there, like, if Juan Soto gets traded this year, where is he going to go? I do think it's St. Louis, right? So I think that provides us with a potential interesting betting opportunity, right? So if we believe that by Tuesday, August 2nd, or when we wake up on August 3rd, that Juan Soto may be a member of the St. Louis Cardinals, then we can say, okay, Goldschmidt and Arenado also aren't going to play in this upcoming series against Toronto, who just scored 1 billion runs and bludgeoned the Boston Red Sox here. Then maybe we have an opportunity to get a good number on the Cardinals after the series with Toronto, if we assume that Soto is going to be there, and then we get Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado back. Now, looking at the odds currently, what they're at, like, Milwaukee's a pretty big favorite. Milwaukee should be a big favorite. So it's not like this number is wrong, or I'm like, oh my God, like St. Louis, or the value on this number. Just that I think if Toronto beats them up, which we might expect, or maybe just wins the series or whatever, and then Goldschmidt and Arenado come back. Goldschmidt's obviously white hot right now, and it's like become like a minus 140 now to win National League MVP. They get Soto at that point. Like, I would definitely roll the dice on the St. Louis Cardinals, who, by the way, like, they're plus 155 for a reason. They could also just, like, organically win the division as well. Like, that's not outside the realm of possibility, even without Juan Soto. So the way that I would look to play it, if you're looking to play the National League Central, and you agree with Drew Silva and I don't know if Dinsick agrees, that Soto could be a member of the Cardinals, I'd wait until after the series with Toronto, hope the Blue Jays win the series, get a better number, and go from there.
These are both really flawed teams, is what I would say. Like, they're not really that good of teams. They've both played well against bad competition, and the Cardinals have the easiest schedule of any team over the 2 months that remain of the regular season. I would factor that in. The Brewers have an easy schedule too. They're both going to beat up on NL Central teams, and the Cardinals have, I think, 6 games against the Nationals left too. So if they pluck Soto away and then go beat up on Washington, that gives them an edge as well.
A little double-edged sword there. Let me ask you, Nick, about the Brewers before we get out of here, because I'm trying to figure out, this was the buzziest team among the baseball sharps that I know back in like April. And
I talked about them in like every radio interview I did. It's like, oh, well, what do you like? Possibly it's like a sleeper.
Yeah, well,
I think the Brewers are pretty good.
Yeah, they got the
starters.
We spent so much time talking about the Brewers.
Yeah, I mean, presumably it's a team that's built for postseason success with the strength of their starting pitching, but for whatever reason, like, it's just not really working out so far this season. Do you have like a general read on whether these guys are going to be a factor one way or the other when it's all said and done, or is this just a team that was overrated and we all missed something?
I don't know if it's that they're overrated. I just think it's like it comes down to trust to a large degree, right? And, they've obviously got the horses to be able to say, okay, like, if this team catches fire, like, any team can, Drew, I'm guessing, is a St. Louis Cardinals fan. I think back to that team that David Eckstein won MVP. Any team can get hot and win a World Series, right? So it's within the realm of possibility. They've got a great back end of the bullpen and 2 stud starters, obviously. But it's like when it comes down to it, are you going to trust the Brewers or the Dodgers in a series? The Brewers could beat them, but I trust the Dodgers to win that series. Would you trust the Brewers or the Mets? Would the Mets have the 2 guys at the front of their rotation, assuming DeGrom is there? I think I trust the Mets. I think I would trust the Braves. So it's not that the Brewers can't do it. It's just that I'd rather put my money elsewhere if forced to choose.
Yeah, wait to see the numbers that come out as we look ahead past the NL Central. We're talking about winning the National League. By the way, Brewers 2.5 games up on the Cardinals in their division. They're going to play each other 7 more times the rest of the season. The Cardinals are Brewers and Brewers. So interesting to keep an eye for the NL Central. And of course, what happens with Juan Soto. I'm sure Drew Silva over there is rooting for him to go to his city. I know Nick has to jump. We're going to get to the American League in a second. But if you're not following Nick on Twitter, you could do so at the Kostos. You check him out and you bet every single weekday with Ken Barkley, 3 to 7 p.m. Eastern. Nick, thank you so much for the time.
I'm just can't wait for the time when you ask me about a team that plays in the state of Wisconsin and it's the Green Bay Packers, not the Milwaukee Brewers. But great being on with you guys. Really appreciate it.
Until then.
Everybody. Yes, until everyone. Wishing everybody Minimal Sweats winning bets the absolute very best of luck.
And like I said, we're going to get to the AL Central first. Quick reminder, weekends are better with MLB Sunday leadoff coverage presented by Uber Eats. Catch the Tigers take on the Blue Jays in Toronto this Sunday, July 31st at 11:30 a.m. Eastern, live on NBC and Peacock. To learn more, go to peacocktv.com/MLB. And if you want a chance to win $25,000 on the game, download the NBC Sports Predictor app powered by PointsBet and enter Sunday's free Grand Slam Pick'em contest. Nick had to jump, but that's okay. We have Drew Silva here to help us break down the AL Central. You know, there's obviously, these are the most intriguing divisions in my mind. We talked about the NL East, the NL Central. The AL Central is another one that pops for so many reasons. And I'm curious kind of just to pick your brain. If I look at the Twins, the White Sox, and the Cleveland Guardians, right now, obviously, the favorite, and rightfully so, is Minnesota. They're the best team. But the White Sox have so much talent, and it's confusing for a lot of us in the betting space to wrap our head around how this team, this squad, is third in their division right now. What will they finish at? And could they end up winning the division? You find plus money on them right now. How do you ultimately look at the American League Central, and how do you advise bettors to kind of handicap this division down the stretch?
It's a tough one. And yeah, the White Sox not being better than they've been is confusing for me too. They've had a lot of injuries. Lucas Giolito has not pitched like Lucas Giolito. He's been a little bit better lately. Like going into the break, he had a couple of, I think 4 out of his 5 starts you could consider dominant. So that's a huge factor in this. If he can just be close to the guy that he's usually been, that goes a long way. Having him and Dylan Cease, combining to be the 1 and 2 guys, and then Michael Kopech being a solid third, and Johnny Cueto has been pretty good too. And mostly they just need Eloy Jimenez to be healthy and Luis Robert to be healthy. Tim Anderson to stay on the field, Yoan Moncada. They've all had like nagging injuries throughout the year. Some of them more nagging than some of them more major than minor. Speaking of Eloy, especially, I feel like I want to back the White Sox. Like I felt that going into the year that the White Sox were going to run away with this division, and they just haven't, which makes the Guardians, I think, kind of interesting. They have the pitching. They need to add bats. They have one of the lowest payrolls in baseball. So if they wanted to get a little bit aggressive at the deadline, take on a bad contract from another team, find a way to pump up the middle of that batting order, get Jose Ramirez some help. Like Josh Naylor's been pretty good. He's been hitting cleanup for them. I wouldn't say he's a traditional cleanup type hitter. When you look at most other contending teams around the league, he's not that guy. But if they can add a bat, if they can add Josh Bell from the Nationals, like that would be huge to extend that lineup a bit more. And I mean, Tristan McKenzie and Shane Bieber have been great. I think they have the horses to get it done. And I like where those odds are. Just if you're going to take a long shot bet on them. Yeah, I think the White Sox are the most talented. The Twins are in command, but the Guardians are the most intriguing for me.
Yeah, surely a 3-team race where probably only one of these teams is getting in. I think right now you have to give Toronto and Tampa 2 of the wild card spots. And Seattle looks pretty strong right now to pick up that 3rd. So maybe only 1 seat at the dance for the AL Central, which makes obviously decision making at the deadline a little bit more, a little bit more interesting, I guess. I'm curious. The Twins being having a decent lead in this division at this point, but being plus money, is that just because they can't seem to stay healthy. People just don't believe that this team will just be able to hold their form through the tougher portions of their schedule coming up.
Yeah, I think it feels like a really flawed roster. If they have Byron Buxton, Carlos Correa healthy at the same time going into the playoffs, you'll feel really. Luis Arias at the top of the lineup. He's been awesome. I think he might get some down ballot MVP votes. Not that he's going to win it. They definitely need starting pitching. Like Joe Ryan leads their rotation. He's getting up into territory that he's never been in innings wise. You worry about him kind of hitting a wall down the stretch, and then you're relying heavily on like Sonny Gray, Dylan Bundy, and Chris Archer, which is, I don't know, doesn't inspire a lot of confidence. So they need to make moves at the deadline. Yeah, that's a huge factor in all this stuff. What the Twins are going to do at the deadline, I worry that they might, sit tight a little bit too much, or maybe they see this as an opportunity to actually go win the AL Central and bounce back from what was a really disappointing year last year. I don't know. I don't have a good read on the Twins. I don't think the betting markets do either. Like if you look at them with plus odds, even though they've got the edge right there in the division right now.
So just only 4 games now currently separate. If you look at the AL Central, Minnesota, Cleveland, and the White Sox. And we saw Minnesota and the White Sox being at the top, both in plus money. And of course, the Guardians, as you mentioned, the most intriguing to win the division. What's concerning is the White Sox are 9-14 straight up against Minnesota and Cleveland this year, as you look at the division race down the stretch. Hey, before we let you go, Drew, though, I do have a question. As we look at, all the teams we talked about, and this could be anyone down the stretch, the trade deadline is a week away. What is the most intriguing team come trade deadline that you want to keep an eye out for that could definitely change your decision-making as we look at the futures market in Major League Baseball?
My answer is whoever gets Juan Soto. That feels like that's the lead story around baseball right now. To add a 23-year-old who's on a Hall of Fame trajectory, he has kind of like underwhelming numbers right now, but I think a lot of that has to do with he's on an underwhelming overall team in Washington, and he could explode down the stretch, whichever team acquires him. And right now it's the Cardinals, Yankees, Dodgers, Padres, Mets, Mariners have been talked about. All there's 7 teams that are in the running. And so, that would be my answer. Whoever gets Juan Soto. There's interesting pitching options on the market. Luis Castillo, wherever he goes, if the Yankees maybe add him or the Dodgers add him, that's certainly intriguing. Frankie Montas looked healthy coming off that shoulder scare. But other than those guys, like there's not a ton of high impact starting pitchers out there. And as we've talked about throughout the course of this show, it feels like every contending team needs arms, and there's only like so many chairs at the table, and some of them are going to be left out.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to start getting pretty crazy with starting pitching market and trades in general over the next few days. So it'll be fascinating to follow, especially from the betting perspective, as we look to get involved with the division winners and just the NL and AL pennant. So everyone keep a close eye on that.
I gotta say, Cardinals, you make a compelling case that the Cardinals have the pieces to get Soto. 16-1 for the NL is pretty interesting.
Are the Cardinals going to dish out a $500 million contract?
I think that extension can wait. Like maybe eventually, maybe they start negotiations like next spring, but it's, baseball doesn't work like where there aren't like sign and trades, like you don't have to get into those negotiation talks.
No, not all. He has 2 more years.
Right.
A guy making what, $18 million?
Like, will they eventually do it? I think they could. I think they print money, and they've run into like top 7 payrolls before when they really feel like they need to get uncomfortable. Under Bill DeWitt, the owner right now, they've always liked to have like a face of the franchise, and they're willing to pay big money to that face. And they're going to lose Goldschmidt and Arenado eventually to old age. And Soto could be the next guy that carries the mantle for what is, a pretty proud franchise.
Okay, we'll see what the Nats end up wanting in return if they do deal him over the next week. Definitely the biggest storyline right now. Drew, we appreciate all of the insight. He's on Twitter, by the way, @DrewSilv, and you could listen on NBC Sports EDGE Circling the Bases podcast. And of course, check him out, his MLB Power Rankings. That's on NBCSportsEdge.com. Drew, we really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's going to be wild down the stretch, betting baseball, especially for you.
I'm betting baseball. Oh,
yeah. You know you're going to bet baseball. At least it's like a week on, week off period for you, but I look forward to seeing what you bet. Are you on Battle of the Bets this week?
You're
going to have to
give
give out
Friday.
You're going to have to give out some baseball bets there.
I know, probably.
All right. Well, you don't want to bet baseball right now. That's totally fine. There's tennis. There's other things on the horizon. And that's how we give out our edge of the day. Where are you going? Because by the look of it, you're not giving out a Major League Baseball play.
No, we're sticking to tennis. So effectively today is the start of the North American swing. North American swing basically is after Wimbledon, they have a couple of these smaller tournaments in the vacation destinations like we talked about, Palermo for the women. And this week, the men are in Umag, Croatia. Whew, man, talk about a beautiful part of the world. The Istrian Peninsula of Croatia is just show-stoppingly beautiful. But the North American swing starts in earnest with the Atlanta Open this week. We have a fun run up to the U.S. Open where we play in Atlanta, Washington, D.C., then they go to Canada, and then they come back and have Cincinnati before the U.S. Open. These tournaments are kind of increasing in terms of prestige and points and money. They're all contested on hard courts, but of various speeds. Some of these hard courts are aggressively fast. Others are a little on the slow side, which makes it interesting because it gives pretty much everybody has a chance, everybody on tour. You're a clay specialist, you'll have an opportunity in this swing to try to at least make a little bit of noise. And then on the flip side, if you dominate with your serve, a week like this week in Atlanta is going to be big. Like the guys at the top of the market are your Kyrgios, your Isners, your Opelkas, the big time servers. And that's because this is a relatively quick speed. I like today in the late game, I like John Millman to come out victorious over Alexei Popyrin. Popyrin and Millman are both Australians. Neither guy really in especially good form right now. However, I would point to Popyrin's 2022 campaign as probably one of the more disastrous of younger players who is expected to at least make kind of one more run. He has been flat out bad this year. Millman, on the other hand, has a couple of nice wins on his resume in 2022. I have not downgraded him as aggressively as I've downgraded Popyrin. And I think in general, Millman tends to, even though he's a little bit long, he's a truly he defines journeyman on the ATP tour effectively. But he tends to bring his best late summer in the North American swing. I think he, in general, likes the speed of these courts this week. Next week, he has some impressive wins in his past. And I think John Millman should be the favorite in this one by a meaningful margin. I make his price minus 125 on the money line. He is currently 103 at PointsBet, and I think that's about as good as you're going to see for a player who, in my opinion, is clearly the better of the two, but not quite getting the market respect because of his age.
So they've played each other 5 times. Millman's 4-0 in the previous 4 matches against Popyrin. So minus 103. Yeah. Seems pretty good.
You can get plus 100. It's even better now.
Yeah, I'm looking right now. Live odds on PointsBet plus 100. Okay. Plus money on this Monday. That's tonight, 6 p.m. 100% agree with you. Love your explanation. I get involved with all your tennis bets. You know that. I'm going to take us for Edge of the Day to the Rocket Mortgage Classic because not much going on today. And I like Cameron Young, and I think a lot of people like him. We're looking at 18-1. I know he's going to be a popular pick, and for that reason, I'm getting involved early in the week to hopefully get the best number that we're going to see. Coming into Detroit, as we know, incredible showing at the Open Championship. Finished a shot behind Cam Smith to finish second, but he also has 4 second-place finishes this season. 4. And what's a little fun about this tournament, a little note I found is that 2 of the last 3 winners at the Rocket Mortgage Classic were first-time tour champions. So I'm going to take a shot on the rookie. He has been so close this year, so little weaknesses in his game. He's now ranks top 20 in the world. Cameron Young, 18-1, second to last tournament of the season here. So FedEx Cup points, I take Cameron Young, 18-1.
God, man, he was knocking on the door at the Open. That was real close.
Yeah, real close.
Yeah, I Rocket Mortgage Classic actually drew a really cool, fun competitive field.
Yes.
I think this is going to be a fun tournament, and 18-1, 17-1 now, I think is a fun play for a guy who truly is coming into, he's talk about a guy with good form. I mean,
incredible form coming into this.
His form numbers are popping. Great look. Let's go Cam Young.
Right now, most bet golfers, odds, of course, open this morning on this Monday. Max Homa, Will Zalatoris, who's 15-1. And then we're looking at Cam Young, 18-1, and now 17-1. So the odds are moving. And of course, we'll continue to do so leading up until Thursday. That's all we have here on this episode, though, of Bet the Edge. We'll be back on Friday, same place, same time, 11 a.m. Eastern on the NBC Sports EDGE YouTube channel. Until then, for Drew Dinsick, I am Sara Perlman. Thank you for being with us. Best of luck with all your bets. We'll see you guys right back here on Friday.